Talk to me, Warriors! Feel the wrath of a tired Vegas crowd! Hulk Hogan! Warriors! $1 million to do nothing. The power of the Warriors.
Man, I don't know how he did that, even at 40 years old. I'm John Rant with the Retro Review of WCW Halloween Havoc 1998, The Redux. 4 years ago, I did a review of this. Why not do more venom, anger, jokes, and also venom and anger? Because goodness me, this pay-per-view was absolutely snake bit from the word go. So much to dive into, so little time. So watch it go into overtime, just like the pay-per-view did. At the MGM Grand Garden Arena, where Herb Abrams himself had the Blackjack Brawl and had like 300 people in a 16,000 seat venue. This particular night, 10,600 some odd people. I don't know how many were paid. I don't really care. WCW at this point was still making money. They wouldn't make money in 1999. They definitely wouldn't make any money in 2000. They would lose like $60 million. And of course, the AOL Time Warner merger, along with WCW, that whole thing, Turner and all that stuff, they would lose a bunch of billions. It's actually baffling how corporate mergers work out and they end up losing so much money, yet they're able to continue. Modern business, isn't it just wonderful? Let me know how you feel about this show in the comments, please, because goodness me, WCW at this point was pretty much just hemorrhaging ideas. They were just out of grand ideas. They were out of grand things. They were still close in the ratings, but they hadn't had a ratings victory in a couple months. And the only time that they would have a ratings victory after this pay-per-view would be the Nitro immediately after this, because unfortunately, matches kept going long. They kept having interviews. They kept having Nitro Girls segments. They had so much padding to a pay-per-view that should have been a slam dunk. Now, I'm not saying Hogan versus Warrior 2, Electric, why the hell did we think doing this Mania 6 rematch was a good idea? Boogaloo, that's really goddamn wordy. I don't understand how they thought it was a good idea. They just threw a bunch of money at Warrior. Come give Hogan his win back. That's pretty much it. And I'm no fan of the Warrior. I will make that well known in this review like I have in other videos, but even this was a clear power play move by Hogan. And also, of course, I'm wearing the shirt of my favorite wrestler of all time because I get to talk more about how WCW misused him because Eric Bischoff just didn't know what the hell to do with him. Also, Hogan wanted to hold Bret Hart down because Bret Hart was always better than Hogan. So yeah, the night when good battles evil. Pretty bad that Hogan and Warrior was considered good versus evil when both were pretty goddamn evil. Indeed. Sponsored by Snickers. No, we said Snickers. No, Hulk. Snickers. God damn it, Hulk. Hell with it. Let him just use the spray can. What the hell does it matter? And honestly, so goddamn snake bit from the word go. The pay-per-view feed was cut during Goldberg versus DDP because they kept going in overtime. Even if they had gotten another bit of pay-per-view time, if they paid for another 30 minutes, I'm not exactly sure how it works. If you can pay for 30 more minutes or you pay for another hour, it doesn't really matter. With how lengthy this show felt, even before you got to the main event matches, you're thinking, they're going to keep going into overtime. And I remember watching this at a buddy's house. Watch this at a buddy's house because his dad would order the pay-per-views. And we're like, what happened? What the hell happened? People were pissed. He got refunded. He was one of the people that got refunded. I'm not going to say his name here because I don't want to, talk about his finances. But let's just say he was one of the people that got refunded. And it was absolutely hilarious. And they had to show the full Goldberg versus DDP match on the next Nitro. And that was the last Nitro that got a ratings victory. It would have been the Finger Poke of Doom episode. But oh yeah, they did the Finger Poke of Doom. And then they put butts in the seats, tuning over to WWE Raw for a taped Raw where Foley won the title. So, I don't know exactly what match went so far into overtime that they thought that let's just keep having matches go longer, timing issues, matches, and everything. I'll just blame the fact 2 Disco Inferno matches took place on this pay-per-view. So I'll just blame Disco Inferno. It's a safe bet every time. The stupid Peter Griffin looking motherfucker, except the difference is Peter Griffin actually was funny. Disco was not. Disco was never funny. And even though Disco had some decent matches in WCW, it was always good people carried him because honestly, the guy could never work. The guy could never really do anything. And the fact that he is given any kind of platform to say anything is goddamn baffling. So we get Warrior Hogan clips with a Latin choir. Notice how I haven't even gotten any of the matches yet. The reason I haven't gotten any of the matches is because we were 13 minutes into the show before we got to a match. I'm not kidding. Fortunately, on The Cock, they feature the whole pay-per-view, so they feature Goldberg versus DDP, which is great because it was pretty much one of the only standout matches on the show. I did like the inflatable gargoyle and inflatable pumpkin mascot. I think that was actually pretty goddamn cool. Shivani Heenan and Mike Tenay on commentary. Boy, that Warrior intro really tired me out. I don't understand how he was able to do that. Oh, wait, he can't do that anymore because, Warrior, people say Warrior's heart gave out. I didn't even know Warrior had a heart because he never displayed the fact that he had a goddamn heart. Mr. Queering doesn't make the world work. All the stuff he said about Martin Luther King, the stuff he said about Davey Boy Smith, and all the other stuff and everything. Yeah. Taking all these shots at people that were better than him. I mean, him taking shots at Hulk Hogan was kind of funny. But it's hilarious that he would take shots at Hogan for the fact that he was cheating on his wife. And, gee, Warrior, didn't you cheat on your first wife? The first wife that gave you everything and was there when you had nothing? Oh, right, Warrior can't see this because he ain't in heaven. He's down there in hell. And yes, Warrior was an icon for a brief moment in time. And I was a fan of his when I was 9 to 10 years old. So were a lot of people. So Dave Penzer was the ring announcer. I like David Penzer. Gary Michael Capetta was a better ring announcer, but Dave Penzer was also good. Nitro Girls. I liked Spice, the short-haired one. I really liked Spice, actually. And Shivani mentions that Disco and Hoobie, Raven and Jericho, and Ming and Wrath were added to the pay-per-view card. Just pretty quickly. They were just added last minute. Sadly, it wasn't the only match added last minute because they realized, well, wait a second, we probably need to pad this pay-per-view card out a bit. But had they cut a couple of these matches, they would have easily been under time. Except then maybe the main event matches would have felt, hey, we can go 30 minutes. And when they already felt like they went an hour each. So, Mean Gene is talking to Rick Steiner. And on the previous Nitro, Buff Bagwell had enough of Scott Steiner and hit him with a chair. And he's no longer part of the NWO. He has a change of heart. He'll be in his corner. I'm done with the NWO. I'll watch your back. Spoiler alert, he doesn't watch his back. It was a more obvious turn than we had at Halloween Havoc 95 when Flair tried to convince Sting to be his tag partner against Arn and Brian Pillman. Except that was entertaining. This wasn't because it involved the NWO well past its sale date. Nothing even against the participants. It just wasn't good at all. Raven says he's been on a losing streak. What about me? What about Raven? Then Jericho comes out and says Jericho equals buy rates, butts and seats, and rock and roll. Funny, he thinks that he's all three of those now. When he might have been back then, and even for a number of years. But he ain't now. All he is, it's funny, just a little quick side note. It's funny that Jericho basically railed against all the people that he, that held him down and that held others down in WCW. All the older people that wouldn't get out of the way. And now Jericho's older than all of them, all they were, Flair, Hogan, doesn't matter. He's older than all of them by a number of years. And he's wrecking the only competition that WWE has right now. But that'll be safe for an AEW review. Let's talk about this. I could beat you in 2 minutes. You're such a loser. So Raven jumpstarts him. Jericho was a TV champion, by the way, at this point. They dropped the Jericho-Goldberg feud, which is a shame because I think they could have gotten some money out of it. But Goldberg didn't want to work with Jericho because Jericho, was a wrestler. Don't worry, there's going to be some shots of Jericho here, too. And we got an even flow DDT for 2. Raven tried to jumpstart. They did their stuff, and then Canyon tries to help. And then Lion Tamer causes Raven to tap out. Raven was totally checked out and will be gone from the company, I believe, by late August of 1999. Just after Road Wild 99, I believe. Because then he would show up in ECW by September of 99. So Hogan and Bischoff come out to kill time. All the black, no Hulk, and NWOites. Whew. He's talking about for those people, for those people, no Hulk, no. Look what I did to Horace, my own flesh and blood. He put some staples in Horace Hogan's head. Whatever happened to Horace Hogan? I mean, he wasn't amazing. In fact, he wasn't really good at all, but they seemed to keep trying with him, and then he was gone. I think he was gone by like late 2000. So Hulk says that he will beat the Warrior, that he's not worried about the Warrior. He'll beat him. And then we got Ming versus Wrath, Brian Clark. Brian Clark's, he always seemed on the verge of doing something great, but he seemed to have some chronic issues. Now that everybody has tuned out of the pay-per-view review here, rather, due to the fact that I made a terrible pun. If anybody gets it, let's talk about the fact this match wasn't good. Ming was still terrifying, is still now. Apparently is a really, really nice guy, but I am still terrified of him. And got the meltdown, pup handle slam, 1, 2, 3. Seriously, Brian Clark always seemed like he was just on the verge of doing something good, and then he self-destructed. Ironic for a guy named Adam Bomb. So, Kidman is with Lee Marshall for WCW.com. And then we get Juventud Guerrera versus Disco Inferno contenders match. Winner faces Kidman later in the pay-per-view. Juvi deserved better than this. Gee, having to wrestle and carry Disco Inferno, no wonder Juvi turned to drugs. I'd turn to drugs too. I'd turn to everything to have to deal with Disco Inferno. Fuck Disco Inferno, by the way. Fuck his parents for not doing the right thing, so he didn't have to see Disco Inferno born. So, Juvi tried. Disco wasn't the absolute worst wrestler in the world. He just always overvalues what he meant to WCW. He hits a pile driver for 3, that was fine. And then we get the Nitro Girls as Cowgirls. This is a second Nitro Girls segment on a pay-per-view that was already bloated. Now, nothing against the women. Again, I like Spice. And they served a purpose. 4 segments. We would be up to 4 segments here. So, Scott Steiner cuts a promo. Oh no, Scott Steiner with a live mic. We are in trouble. He's fat. But enough about J.J. Dillon. Actually, J.J. Dillon wasn't at this point, but J.J. Dillon would come out after. Scott Steiner said, I've been going for 3 days and 30 nights. He actually meant to say 30 days, but he was Scott Steiner and he doesn't need to. All his freaks. And he says, hey, I'll team with the Giant and it'll be a tag title match. And we're going to defend the tag titles against Bagwell and Rick Steiner. J.J. Dillon says, if you lose, you face Rick for 15 minutes. Spoiler alert, the match doesn't take that long. Neither match takes that long, even though they drag on forever. Another added match to an already bloated pay-per-view. We are about an hour into the pay-per-view by this point. Timing issues. Fit Finlay took on Alex Wright. Ireland versus Germany, tale as old as time. And of course, Alex Wright. You're just going to have to imagine the dance and everything, the dance, because I can't do the dance at all. Whatever happened to Alex Wright? Why wasn't he brought back to the States? I believe he went back to Germany to wrestle in his dad's promotion and wrestle where he wants. I wouldn't mind seeing Alex Wright make a one-time appearance on WCW TV, or AEW TV, kind of is like WCW TV, to maybe face Chris Jericho. They had a few decent matches on WCW TV. Hell, feature Alex Wright. Why not? They featured Juvi. They featured Nick Gage. So feature Alex Wright. But anyway, about backstory. Apparently, Fit Finlay wrestled his father, Steven, either his father or his uncle. It was a familial relation of some kind. And he broke that man's leg. So, oh no, Alex Wright wants revenge. They sure tried with Alex Wright, but it just never seemed to click. They made him Berlin. That didn't work. Then they had him be one of the Dancing Fools, along with Disco Inferno. Yeah, I would have gone back to Germany, too. Boring chance. It wasn't bad, but really sad how Fit Finlay suffered like a leg injury. I want to say in the Junkyard match that hastened him into semi-retirement for a number of years. But a neck breaker. 1, 2, 3. Alex Wright gets the victory, and Germany reigns supreme. Tomorrow belongs to me. If anybody gets that, they are going to be pissed in the comments. Lee Marshall's with Ernest Miller. And this gave me very, very bad flashbacks to when I retro-viewed the entire last year of WCW, from the reboot episode to the last episode of Nitro. You know, if I really, really wanted to punish myself, I should have done it from the very beginning of Vince Russo coming over to WCW. Or maybe even from Fall Brawl 99 all the way to the end to really just see the absolute, downfall of WCW. But I went mad by the time we got to Bash at the Beach 99, or Bash at the Beach 2000. So I don't think I really could have made it another few months. So anyway, Saturn versus Lodi. Well, Lodi had his signs. Lodi wanted revenge for the Flock. He did not get it. The Flock being disbanded. And they added this match to pay-per-view. They thought that it was a good idea to feature Lodi in a pay-per-view match, who had a good look, but had been presented like a goof, and Saturn beat him in a few minutes with a DVD. And And the commentators kill more time killing on a pay-per-view that's already going in overtime. And then we still have 7 more matches, by the way. Recaps of, Buff Bagwell saving Rick Steiner. Nitro Girls. Again, the Nitro Girls. Beautiful Nitro Girls. But they're out here for a 3rd time. Enough already. Kidman versus Disco Inferno in a Cruiserweight title match. 2nd Disco Inferno match of the night. I am glad that WCW went out of business because of this. Kidman deserved better. The pile driver got hit again, but Disco couldn't cover because he'd been worked on and was exhausted. Also, the fact he's Disco Inferno, he's not very smart. Shooting star press, 1, 2, 3. Let's move on. Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell against Scott Steiner and the Giant. WCW tag title match. Okay. The crowd was into this, and obviously everybody could see it coming. Rick got beat up for a while, eventually tagged Buff, and then Buff just immediately turned. He went to do a double clothesline, holding Rick's hand, and then immediately kicks him in the nuts and beats him up. But because he's his tag partner, we can't call DQ. They beat each other up, or he beats him up. They just do this. They do the war drum thing. That doesn't look like a war drum thing at all. And then Buff leaves. More on that in a bit. Buff leaves. Buff gets completely out of the scene. And then Giant and Scott Steiner beat down on Rick for a while. Just keep beating him up. Rick tries to make comeback. Eventually does after a drop kick from the Giant. That was impressive. And I know he's a big guy, but it took him about 20 years to get up there. I'm glad he's all right, because he's not a natural high flyer, even though at this point he could do some good shit. And Scott got hit. And then a Bulldog on the Giant. 1, 2, 3. New tag team champions. It's going to be Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell as the tag team champions. But wait, Buff turned on Rick. So it ends up being Judy Bagwell. I believe it ends up being Judy Bagwell and Rick, if I remember right. But I think Kenny Chaos actually became Rick's tag partner for realsies. Yeah, the one half of High Voltage that people actually remember. It was Rage and Chaos? Is that who it was? Whatever happened, was it Rage? Somebody help me, because my WCW knowledge usually is pretty vast, but I'm trying to remember. Who was the other member of High Voltage and what happened to him? I hope he's still alive. I hope he's doing well. Scott Steiner stalls for a while and then tries to leave, and then Rick attacks him, and the Giant tries to attack Rick. During the match, by the way, this is a singles match, but the referee ignores it. Low blows. The referee ignores that. Someone in a Bill Clinton mask comes in a suit, attacks the referees. And then gets a slapjack from Stevie Ray, because the NWO, and hits Rick with the slapjack while the other referee's down, Charles Robinson, and is Buff Bagwell. Okay, quick question. So he goes to the back. This is maybe 10 minutes until this happens, 10, 15 tops. And he manages to get all the way back around in a suit, get in the mask, and do this just because. Why didn't he just run back out and do this? He had already turned on Rick. It's not like this needed to be done. Why were they doing this? What the hell's going on? I don't know. They don't know. So let's just move on from that. Suddenly, the bell rings. The bell rings, by the way. The bell rings. So it's a DQ. The match keeps going. Who rang the bell? Who rang the bell? Who's rang the bell? What's happening? Why is this going on? Who's running this thing? Clearly Bischoff lost control of the goddamn show. And the match keeps going. Buff does the old thing that Austin did with Dude, in that match with Dude Love, where he used Vince's hand to count down. It's an old thing that had been done in the territories and other stuff. You can't lay your hands on the ref, but then he does this thing. 1, 2, Rick kicks out. 1, 2, Rick kicks out. And eventually he drops Buff on the ropes, and that hurts his neck and everything, but he rolls out because Buff did come back from a previously injured neck. And then Bulldog for 3, so he beats Scott Steiner. After the bell rang, after Buff Bagwell had run in, gotten in a Bill Clinton mask and a suit, laid out officials, laid out Charles Robinson, gotten a slapjack. WCW in the late 90s, ladies and gentlemen. And then here's package on Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. The Outsiders explode. Hall's personal demons had taken hold. Unfortunately, that was kind of true to life. Rest in peace, Scott Hall. And he had a drink, and he was pretending to be drunk. And it was all a ruse, because he throws it at Nash and beats him up and attacks him. And then he hits him with the mic, chokes him with the cable. And then Nash is being checked on. Hall grabs the mic. and kills time. We get Wolfpack chants, and Hall beats him down, but then Nash eventually fires up. They fire up, the crowd fires up enough where Nash hits him. Hall ends up, selling everything, getting beat up. He gets hit with one jackknife, two jackknives. At this point, you could tell Nash was having difficulty because he had that, screwed up leg, and also because of just other injuries in general. And I'm not making a quad joke. I'm saying literally he posted about how his leg was screwed up for years. If he had two good working legs, then he might have had an even better career. But boy, he made a lot of money. But hits a jackknife. The second jackknife, he almost didn't get him up there for, but he's stout, and Hall went up there for him. And he could have beat him up, but he just does the crotch chop and leaves. He proved his point. Nash loses by countout. Okay. Whatever. And then more Nitro girls in leather and wigs. I would not mind seeing Spice. Never mind. Let's just move on from that. And here's what should have been a slam dunk. Bret Hart in WCW. Bret Hart in WCW, unfortunately, was not a slam dunk. $2.65 million. They signed him. Even if he couldn't wrestle, even if he broke his knuckle, couldn't wrestle, and there was a non-compete of him being in the ring or being able to have a match in the ring. Let's just say they had featured him on the next Nitro. That's all you had to do. Coming off of the freaking Montreal Screwjob is right here. Put him on Nitro. Bret, 7 to 10 minutes. Say what you want. Dagger. Right in WWE's heart. I'm not saying WWE didn't have Austin, didn't have people rising up, didn't have stars that were doing some great things, but don't fucking tell me that wouldn't have done something. And Bret could have gotten everything off his goddamn chest. But no, Bischoff, Hogan, everybody involved, the Turner executive, anybody that was in charge of that company just couldn't, they couldn't see, it was a gift on a goddamn platter. He was a proven commodity, he was a global star, and I don't care what they paid him. He was worth every nickel. That's a quote from Mean Gene about Bret Hart on the Monday Night Wars long-running series that WWE did. A proven commodity, my favorite wrestler of all time, and I can't tell you how unbelievably pissed off I was seeing Bret Hart wasted in WCW. Yeah, he earned a whole lot of money, and then Goldberg cost him more money by kicking him in the goddamn head because he was a klutz. Now, you didn't mean to. I ranted about that plenty on the Goldberg documentary. And, on the Bret Hart one. I did the WWE on A&E biography reviews that I did. You can check that out on the Old School Wrestling Reviews and Documentary Reviews playlist. Because I reviewed a lot of them. The only one I didn't review was the Randy Savage one because I didn't have a replay of it, and also because that was a hit piece. Bret Hart could have meant so much to WCW. I'm not saying he could have saved the company. That company was having issues, but don't tell me utilizing Bret Hart as the global icon that he was. Especially in Canada, especially in Europe. He could have meant so much to that company. They didn't know what to do with Bret Hart. That's what Vince McMahon said, and they proved it time and time again. This is under a year from his debut. He showed up on what? What was it? Was it December 15th, 1997? I think it was at Nitro, just a bit before Starrcade 97. They're going to bring him in as a referee. Okay. If the non-compete, whatever, if they couldn't have him actually be anything other than a referee, fine. They still should have had him cut that promo on the Nitro right after the Montreal Screwjob. And then cut another promo, maybe not the next week, but the week after. Show B-roll, recaps, whatever. Feature Bret properly. But no, they creatively tied him, and then he wrestled Ric Flair at Sold Out 98, and then he was wrestling Booker T for the TV Championship. It was going nowhere. They turned him heel within months. It made no sense. He was part of the NWO, and then he was out of it. They teamed him with Hogan, even though Hogan was just going to creatively hold him down because that's all Hulk Hogan did, because Bret Hart was always better than Hulk Hogan. They just absolutely... Am I saying that Bret is absolutely absolved of blame? Sure, he probably was very dejected after the Montreal Screwjob, but they're paying him all that money, and he's a professional and was going to kick the doors down and do some stuff. But nope, they couldn't even do that right. So now he faces Sting for the U.S. Championship, and Bret's the U.S. Champion at this point. This should have been a slam dunk. Scorpion versus Sharpshooter. Strike that, reverse it. Sharpshooter versus Scorpion. And what they really should have done is they should have just said, okay, be technical, be vicious, Brett, be a heel, but also just do what you do. No, they made this laborious, slow, and Sting, by the way, wasn't that motivated here at this point, because I forget the exact timeline, but when he was in the Wolfpack, he was he was struggling with drug and alcohol issues, and then he became a born-again Christian. And hey, he got clean, whatever, that's good for him. Trade one addiction for another bullshit addiction, but nevertheless, if religion fixes you, that's fine. But Brett kept targeting the back. We got, he feigns an injury. He keeps cheating. He tries to use a foreign object or an international object. Wait, Ted Turner wasn't making the people say that. And then Brett attacks the ref. And then Sting hits a splash and hits the post. I'm gutting through, or rushing through a lot of this match, because this match was not good. This was right up there with that Bob Backlund Mania 11 match, just without Roddy Piper screaming, "What do you say?" And Brett then hits Sting with bat shots. I mean, it was only like, they said 4. I think it was more than that. It wasn't 20 like I wrote down, but he hit him with enough bat shots to where he legally should have been comatose. And it gets a sharpshooter on, and it's a knockout. Now, Sting versus Brett. Even at the point where they had creatively destroyed Brett, and Sting was having his issues, you can't tell me that they couldn't have put together a better match than this. You can't tell me that the company shouldn't have, utilized these two better, because Sting at this point didn't feel like anything. I mean, he felt important being the icon of WCW, but he was always one of those company men that I think was a little bit too giving. And Brett is, again, wasting him. Wasting $2.65 million down the drain. He was worth it, and they didn't want to get any return on it. And then they wondered why Brett seemed so dejected. I wonder why. So they do a stretcher job for Sting. We are 30 minutes until the actual pay-per-view feed gets cut. And technically, pay-per-view feeds usually stop at about 2:53, 2:55. Because there's a window you have to stop before the 3-hour mark. Otherwise, you got to pay for another hour. And if you pay for another hour, fine. You can go over a few minutes if you approve it with the pay-per-view companies. They went way over just a few minutes. So then we get Hogan entrance and Warrior entrance. Warrior's music in WCW is so weird. There's something about a sniper that was trying to take out people. And I don't understand it. But he just does this thing. Ow. And he does that. And he almost trips getting into the ring because he was goddamn clueless and didn't understand what the hell he was doing. And look, I'm just going to say again, Warrior, for all his faults, did have an incredible amount of physical charisma. You had to look at him because he looked like and was a living cartoon character. By this point, though, what value did he add? I remember his debut, and it was great. Warrior shows up, huge pop. He talks for a little bit, and then he keeps talking, and then he keeps talking, and then he keeps talking. But it's Hogan versus Warrior 2. Why the hell did they do this? Boogaloo. To say that this was a disaster would be an understatement. I believe me and Gene said if the timing between these two was any more off, they might as well just stop the match and start over. But I always found it funny that the One Warrior Nation, the NWO backwards, had 2 people in it. I see Warrior math was not quite up to snuff with Steiner math because the numbers don't lie and they spell disaster. God, I hope Dana Warrior joins him soon. She should have joined him. The kid should have been able to be raised by somebody that wasn't a goddamn idiot. Hopefully the kids grow up to be better than they ever were. So nevertheless, 20 minutes left. 20 minutes left. And these two just went on forever, the stalling. They stalled before the bell, and then they stalled after the bell. And they tried to do arm wringers and the, test of strength and everything. And Warrior's face was right there on Hogan's crotch and everything. And feel the power, Hogan. And they were just doing the same old stuff that they did that worked in the Sky Dome 8.5 years ago. 8.5 years ago, it worked because you had this incredible atmosphere. Incredible atmosphere. And it was lightning in a bottle. It was the perfect storm. All these cliches. And by this point, it was just WCW wasting money just to please Hogan. And it was a waste of money in general. I mean, regardless of how I feel about Warrior, sure, he got paid. But look at the return they got. August 15th, was it August 15th? I think it was August 15th, 1998. By just after this pay-per-view, he showed up on the next Nitro. I think had maybe one other match. Maybe. I mean, I might even be messing up the timeline. He might have had a match before this. But he showed up on the Nitro afterwards, and within 3 months, he's gone. He wasn't even on the World War III card. He was gone. He was demanding so much goddamn money, the company at that point wasn't going to give him that much money, despite the fact, and I don't know if it was $1 million, but it had to be close to that. There's no way, A, that he would have come back for that much, or, that little money, unless it was like close to or at 7 figures, even for 3 months. And you can't tell me that Bischoff wouldn't have been able to convince Ted Turner, hey, we need to get at Vince, let's write this check to get one of his guys. And they did the freaking, God, this match was ass, absolute ass. One of the worst goddamn matches they ever did. The test of strength, the low blows, we got referees knocked down, we got Stevie Ray Vincent, the Giant running in, belt whipping by both. And then Hogan gets the flash paper together and the lighter, gets it out of the bag, and they're shooting this. They're shooting this. You see the lighter clear as day, you can almost read what date the thing was manufactured on. And then, and it burns off his eyebrows. He's bleeding. He's got his Fu Manchu would end up being singed. And then the crowd's booing. We get Horace Hogan running in. Bischoff distracts. Chair shot the Warrior. 1, 2, 3. And then Warrior gets lighter fluid poured on him. And they're going to try to light him on fire. Nope. And then Doug Dillinger says, hey, that's enough. We shouldn't do that. Where were you, Doug Dillinger, when 50 million people ran in? Is Doug Dillinger still around? I hope so. You pass the test, Horace, and that's it. Whatever did happen to Horace Hogan. DDP and Goldberg make their entrances. I'm going to make this part really quick here. This is where the pay-per-view ran out. They lock up, they go through the ropes. That's where the pay-per-view cuts off. DDP versus Goldberg, World Heavyweight Championship match. This is Goldberg's best WCW match, easily, by far, in my opinion. DDP helped make him look like a world beater. DDP could work with anybody. Goldberg, for his credit, did a whole lot of good stuff. And what ended up happening? He bashes himself into the goddamn post, wrecks his shit, wrecks himself. Goddamn, he's done. He's toast. He's knocked out. DDP has to help him up, but he's dead weight, and he's also the size of a Clydesdale horse. Goldberg picks him up for a jackhammer. Diamond cutter, that's where the streak should have ended. Right there. End the streak. 1, 2, kick out. God damn it. Because Nash didn't benefit from ending the streak. DDP would have benefited. Now, he won the U.S. Championship the next night. Goldberg wins with the jackhammer, and there you go. That's pretty much it right there. I mean, and it's nothing against either of these guys. I just don't have enough time to cover the match, and also I've covered it before. There you go, though. One of the worst pay-per-views that WCW put on in this last few years because of the timing issues and all that. Let's just blame Disco Inferno and move on. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rickland. I'll see you soon.